Welcome back, DIVEBOMB IndyCar podcast, and we are just 3 days away from the day of recording from the 109th running of the Indianapolis 500. Sort of our Christmas and birthdays and everything else all combined is very, very close. It's tantalisingly close now. We have 1 day of on-track action to go for Carb Day, just 2 hours of running, and then the next time we'll see cars on track is for the greatest spectacle in racing, to add its 109th chapter to the most coveted book in motorsport. And we have heard from all 33 drivers who will be taking to the field today in various different press conferences. And as we said for last week's qualifying review, we're going to use this as an opportunity to review some interesting points that the drivers said, but mainly preview what will hopefully be another awesome Indianapolis 500, just as it was last year. So 33 drivers to go over, obviously, to avoid this episode being about 4 hours long. We will try and be as efficient as we possibly can. But obviously the place to start really is Team Penske, because we discussed this on Monday about the attenuator situation and the fact that for the second time in 13 months they are involved in some kind of cheating scandal. A lot has broken out. As of the time we recorded, it felt like that's where it sort of hit its climax of we had a lot of unanswered questions, and that's when there was the most doubt. But I think then there's been a lot of clarifications. The main one is why they did it, which seems to be when they got the part, there was some glue they didn't like, and to sort of smooth it out and make it look better, they added this filler. They've also been using it at road courses throughout the last couple of years, and they've got a set. Some are illegal, some are legal, which they've been cycling around the cars, hence why McLaughlin didn't have it on his car when they seized it for inspection. The part gives no performance advantage, or at least it's incredibly minimal, so it wasn't them trying to gain an advantage, at least from what we can see. So that clarified up quite a lot. The reason why IndyCar Tech hadn't checked it previously seemed to be because they only checked for performance-related matters, not safety-related matters, so the attenuator wasn't something they had checked for manipulation. So that said, it sort of cleans things up a little bit. We did announce on Monday that Power and Newgarden will start 32nd and 33rd, but since Roger Penske has decided to remove 3 very senior members of the IndyCar operations side for Team Penske, so Team President Tim Cindric, Managing Director Ron Rzuski, and General Manager Kyle Moyer, the strategist for all 3 of the cars, have been released of their roles ahead of the Indianapolis 500. Obviously, quite a somewhat similar situation to what happened last year, because obviously both Cindric and Rzuski were suspended for this race last year due to the St. Pete push to pass saga. But a lot more questions answered in the last couple of days. Last year's Indy 500 results won't be amended, which probably is a good thing. So just a really interesting turn of events where actually it doesn't seem like the crime committed was actually that severe. But as Scott McLaughlin stated, 3 people have lost their jobs over it. So another quite major stance taken by Roger Penske. Again, this was something that he's chosen to do to protect his own team, and it's seen 3 very senior personnel leave the team.
Yeah, I mean, we will get into what their drivers said about this today, but I think it's worth just weighing in with our own views on it first of all. And I think really it's just not been a nice situation. I feel like it's kind of overshadowed the race week for what is obviously the biggest race of the year, which has been it's kind of sad. It's sucked a bit, to be honest. I can't help but feel like the story has maybe been overblown a little and ended up going a bit too far. I think it's pretty seismic that it's come to firings of essentially the entire leadership team of one of IndyCar's finest operations on the week of the biggest race of the year. I mean, the fact that Tim Cindric, team president, has been fired is huge. He's basically been Team Penske. He has been the bedrock of their IndyCar operation. And I think fair play to Roger Penske for making a stand. I have no doubts that he knew anything about this. I don't believe he knew anything about anything untoward going on. I think he's conducted himself well. He came out and gave an interview to Fox, basically just clearing up his side of the whole situation. But I just come back to the question: were all of these stands really necessary? I respect that he's taken them for the sake of his integrity. But you've got to consider there's obviously this widespread view that performance gain is negligible, if anything, and it is that, as you say, Dan, a safety problem. And yeah, believed it could have been modified for aesthetic reasons, which is why it wasn't on McLaughlin's car, because Dallara have constantly evolved the attenuator, and there was a batch given out in early 2024 which Penske modified, and the latest batch they were reportedly happy that there was nothing to be cleaned up from an aesthetic point of view. But I think what is kind of got lost in all of this is that even if there wasn't a performance gain, they've ultimately still done something illegal. They didn't cheat, but they still broke the rules. And previous penalties for kind of illegal things on cars have been $25,000 fines and entrant points docked for, I think it was Colton Herter and Robert Schwartzman earlier this year for safety infringements, again with negligible, if any, performance impacts. And I think maybe in light of that, it feels like the competition penalties of, Newgarden and Power being moved to the back of the grid maybe a bit excessive. I think it's certainly right that no past results are being changed. Obviously, Pato O'Ward doesn't want to win the Indy 500 on a technicality. He wants to feel win the Indy 500. And I think, maybe there has just been a bit of an overcompensation for this ongoing optics issue with Roger Penske obviously owning a team in the series that he also owns. And I think the firings probably fall into that bracket of an overcompensation, possibly. But that said, it is a serious thing that there has been essentially negligence on a safety front. Speaking of which, I mean, it was pretty astonishing actually that Doug Bowles admitted to what I found quite an astonishing miss, that essentially the tech team checks the likes of belts, headrest, those sort of fundamental safety aspects, but they've not been checking other vital safety components like the attenuator for amendments, because apparently all they do is look for performance gains, which I guess makes perfect sense. But at the same time, I think it's a major oversight that they are not looking at significant safety parts such as the attenuator, because Doug Bowles himself said that if these parts are modified, it can really reduce or basically hinder the actual role that they serve. And in the case of the attenuator, kind of cushioning rearwards impact. Well, it's something that's been reported for a little while. Doug Bowles and Roger Penske in his interview with Fox admitted that IndyCar are working on kind of putting together an external officiating group to, again, kind of soften this optics issue. IndyCar's really doing a job to try and tackle that perception that there is a bit of a conflict of interest. So I think that's a big step in the right direction. I think Doug Bowles deserves a lot of credit for the work he's doing in his role as IndyCar president, only 3 months or so into that. And to be honest, in all of this, I feel a bit for the Penske drivers as well. I mean, the team has been pulled apart around them, and they had nothing to do with this, unlike the push to pass saga. And they all kind of approached it differently media day. Newgarden was very tight-lipped, understandably, wanted to focus on the race. Power gave a bit away. McLaughlin was pretty frustrated. So, probably worth getting into that.
Yeah, I mean, Power started first, so probably fair to start with Power. He probably was the most open of all of them about the decision that was made. First words were, "It's a shock and a pity," but obviously Roger Penske has to make this very tough decision on what they did. See, Ron Rzucki's been in this car for a long time, and he said he felt quite bad for Rzucki. And obviously they've had great success together. I mean, they've won a couple of championships together, so that's sort of the first things that Power said. I mean, Power's asked quite a lot about it. He's got Jonathan Dugan in this car now, who was Newgarden's engineer when they won the race last year. So maybe that bodes well. Who knows? But no one's ever won from 33rd, I think. So it would be quite a mission, I think, to do it from there.
The highest that anyone's ever won from is 28th.
28th. So yeah, he's got some work to do there. Quite the story, especially after what's happened. All the drivers found out. Power and McLaughlin saw Roger Penske in person, and Newgarden found out over the phone because he was in New York doing some media commitments. And Power just said it was a very tough decision for Roger Penske. He said that Penske did sleep the night before because he had to make the decision to remove the leadership from the team. So that was sort of the first things that Power said about the situation.
I think the biggest bit that I gleaned is that he really made a point of saying that he feels like a lot of this was the result of the pressure from the outside, as I kind of spoke about that perception of this conflict of interest, these optics issues that Doug Bowles has been pretty open about in recent days, and even Power described it as a minor infraction. But at the end of the day, the drivers are having to accept the decisions made by Roger Penske, by their boss. And I think they are clearly a bit rocked by it, I would say. They've all said, we've got to focus on racing, but Power said it's easy to get swept up on it, and he's ultimately just not going to allow any stress, and that tough situations like this can actually help to get the best from him. But he said that everyone's positive in the team, and he was allowed to have conversations with Roger about kind of personnel changes and who goes where and who his preference would be as strategist and things. But he admitted that people are going to have to step up because this is a lot of change, a matter of days before the Indy 500, which is huge.
Newgarden was by himself, which gave an opportunity to ask lots of questions, but he sort of wanted to clearly not answer too many questions about it. So,
and I think that was fine. I don't, because at the end of the day, like I mentioned, the drivers have no fault in any of this. So I think it was totally fair that Newgarden didn't want to kind of get caught up in it and get distracted by it.
Yeah, it's not like push to pass where he did it and broke the rules. I mean,
and on that occasion, he fronted up as well himself.
Yeah, and they probably had literally, well, I'd imagine they had no knowledge of this. So what can you do? He was asked if he's sort of frustrated, anxious, how he was feeling. He says just trying to remain happy because he just looks forward to this race every season. So he's trying to stay positive and obviously what's quite a difficult situation. Says he doesn't really have a plan for how he's going to start from the back, but he still does believe that it's going to be possible to win from 32nd, even though it has never been done before. So we'll see. He was asked if the penalty was fair. His response was, "I just see a bigger mountain. That's all I see." So sort of shut off that question extremely quickly. So that would quite possibly hint that he doesn't agree, but I'm not going to read too much into it. He's asked about how he's going to put those distractions out of the way. He just has the same challenge as always. You've got to focus on what you control, and that's what the difficult thing is of the race every year, whether he's got the situation going around or not. He's got Luke Mason, who's stepping up. So Luke was on his car, was Lucas as he calls him, was on his car before, but is an engineer, but he's moving up to the strategist role. Was obviously Tim Sinjic was his previous strategist there, and as I said, Newgarden was informed over the phone because he was travelling in recent hours. So obviously we didn't really get too much from Newgarden because I think by then everyone sort of got the memo that they don't want to ask him too much because he wasn't going to give very good answers, but it still gave some pretty interesting thoughts there.
I think it's quite telling that when Power and Newgarden were kind of asked about their emotions, Power kind of said, "I'm trying to keep the stress out." Newgarden said, "I'm trying to be happy." So there's clearly, I mean, it's obviously going to rock them. These are not only kind of people they've worked with, but they're friends. You know, when you work that closely with people over a long period of time, of course it's going to rock you. I mean, Newgarden was asked, has it been easy to try to be happy? And he said, it's a little cold to be happy. I think the media sense was apparently really, really cold. But I think the most telling thing is he said that he can absolutely still win. It was asked whether him and Power could work together. I think the general consensus is it's really hard to kind of pre-plan how an Indy 500 of any race is going to pan out. But yeah, I mean, he was short, he was snappy, but he seemed super motivated, I would say.
And then we ended up with McLaughlin. And McLaughlin basically gave one statement and basically said that was going to be enough. So I'll just summarise what McLaughlin said. As I said, it was literally one statement and that was it. Because McLaughlin basically hadn't really said anything since it all happened. Obviously, he crashed, so he didn't run anyway. And he keeps 10th because his car obviously wasn't illegal. So he says he drives with Roger Penske, so he has to respect the decision, understand the decision, and move forward from it. He said he's quite disappointed some of the peers, so other drivers and people in this room, in reference to the journalists, and then went on to praise Roger Penske for what he's done with the sport, and then gets thrown the hard side. And he sort of said people who sort of disrespect Roger Penske, he takes that personally because of what Penske's done for the sport. He obviously reiterated that the penalties are accepted, but they didn't have any gain with that. They had no advantage by having this Antonio situation. But he obviously, like the others, he just said focuses forward and win once again. Obviously, that McLaughlin said he isn't going to really speak much more, and that's pretty much it. But McLaughlin was I wouldn't say angry is the right word, but he was clearly quite frustrated at the situation, sort of just wanted to get it off his chest, and that was it.
Yeah, I've rarely seen him like that, really. I think I would say he genuinely did look gutted by it. I think he was asked if there were any, because obviously he kind of mentioned his peers, and meaning by that, yeah, obviously competitors included. He said he wasn't going to call anyone out, but was aware that there are people kind of pointing things out. And he admitted, it's part of the game, it's part of racing. But the bit that he was really, really frustrated with was the fact that Roger Penske's name, as he said, was thrown through the mud, and essentially that the integrity of him and the team and everyone within the team really had been questioned, and McLaughlin was not happy with that. And I think he's just gutted that essentially 3 key personnel behind, even bringing him to IndyCar have lost their jobs in the blink of an eye. And that is of course going to rock you. So he was the most, I feel like he was the most vocal. Will Power kind of played it down a bit. Obviously Newgarden didn't really speak much about it. McLaughlin, despite, as you say, being the least impacted, was definitely the most outspoken, I would say. And ultimately, he said that he's lost friends in this firing. So it's more than just a few people losing their job. These are friends to the drivers as well.
Right, so we'll go through from 33rd to 1st, just sort of giving bits of information where we can, sort of previewing people's race. We said we might speed by some. So Power lines at 33rd, Newgarden lines at 32nd, VK was 31st. He was in the same press conference as Power, so as you can imagine, he hardly got a word in to pour through in this VK. Yeah,
VK seems like, he seems to feel that like his race car is a bit better. Obviously, he said that he's on the same row as the Penske's and doesn't quite have the same race pace as them. This is an unusual situation for him, obviously, having never started any lower than 7th. So he said that, this was quite interesting, actually. He's kind of approaching it with a different mindset when he was with Ed Carpenter Racing. And, when he was with Ed Carpenter Racing, being on a row with 2 Penske's could easily have been the front row. And he said at that point, the only obligation with ECR was to win. But now he feels like he can take it easy and kind of build into the race a bit more and kind of treat it more like just one of the 17 races rather than this big special standalone thing. And he's more relaxed than his usual nerves when starting up front, and just wants to get the maximum, whether that's P19 or the brink of a podium like he was at Barber. So I think he feels that way. If there's a mad race and everyone expects it to be pretty crazy, then he could pick up the pieces. Yeah, obviously there's pretty big storylines on that back row. Newgarden is obviously going for the historic first ever 3 in a row Indy 500 wins. So that's big. And if he could do that starting from the back row, that would be pretty heroic. And even Power as well. He's in a contract year. There's still no renewal. I know Roger Penske, I think, spoke to Fox earlier in the event and had said something along the lines of there was relative confidence that he probably would stay on board. But it happened with Simon Pagenaud in 2019. Ultimately, winning the 500 got him a new contract. So can we see the same with Will Power? That's one to watch.
Marcus Armstrong lines up 30th. Obviously crashed his car on Saturday morning, which obviously made his life very difficult. Had to come back for last chance qualifying. Made it feel pretty comfortably at the end. Obviously, I think Armstrong was a bit disappointed because he did have what fundamentally was a good car, as we saw by Felix Rose and Chris Pace, and they were pretty similar in pretty much the entire week. So I think Armstrong will be a bit annoyed, but obviously he's in the field, which is the most important thing. So he's just got to move forward from there, really.
Yeah, he said it's very hard because he's gone to a backup car, which is a road course car. So given that their speedway car that he crashed has been prepared since last July, it's very hard to kind of immediately dial that in. So they're still going to be working on that until the very end, really, in carb day practice. This is pretty much Armstrong's first 500, had an engine failure after, I think it was 4 laps last year. I spoke to him a bit about just his crash. He said that rebounding from that crash, despite it being the biggest of his career, was kind of just like riding a bike. He mentioned actually the weight at the back of the car with the hybrid system means it's very hard to save the car now in that sort of moment. Said it's like having half a ton on the rear wing, and described it like a GT car going at 400 kilometers per hour. And said it's made the corners feel a bit tighter as well. So that was just interesting insight. But he said once you get back out after a crash like that, even the biggest of his career, it's quite easy to get back in your groove. But yeah, dialing that car in still.
Marco Andretti lines up next to him. He goes for his 20th Indianapolis 500. Obviously, he got extremely close to winning it on debut, but hasn't really come that close since. Marco can't quite believe it's been 20 years, apparently. Obviously, he became a dad within the last year as well. So his first Indy 500 as a father. He's obviously struggled all week long. Didn't really quite know why. Didn't have the pace to Colton, but he sort of said there's always a car in a garage somewhere which just doesn't have the pace compared to the others. And obviously that he got a short straw of that this year. So look, Marco Andretti hasn't been a name which has been particularly a major factor in Indianapolis 500 in recent years, but hey, stranger things have happened.
I mean, he seems fairly confident. He said when he's no longer confident, that's when he'll stop. He acknowledges his results in recent years at the 500 haven't been where they need to be. I think last year he felt like he had the best car in quite a while and ended up crashing out of the race. And he's been in that kind of situation where he just has a car that doesn't really have that inherent speed. He didn't really feel the pressure of bump day. He said he was still smiling through it, got through pretty straightforward, but he tried every setup, even the one that was on edge and hurt or crashed with in qualifying, and just could not find the speed. But said that he could pull up to the pack and had the pace to do that, and he said that's pretty telling. So feels his race car might be a bit better.
And Graham Rahall's on the inside. It's obviously been a rough couple of years for Graham Rahal at Indianapolis, but obviously he didn't have to return for last chance qualifying for the first time in a couple of years. Today he runs like a charity golf event. So that was sold out again and they raised a lot of money, which is great. So nice charity work there for Graham Rahal. And he gave quite a damning statement where he basically said all the RLL cars' race pace is quite concerning and they don't expect them to be good at the race. Even Sato, who's obviously been quick all week long, he was like, okay, he might be quick in qualifying, but his race pace seems to be pretty awful. So sort of a concern there that there's just not an all-round performance. I mean, they've avoided bump day this year, all of their cars in fairness. However, the race pace doesn't seem to be there. So there's not really much of a confidence, at least from Rahal's perspective in the team.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first time in 3 years that Rahal's avoided having to compete to just make the field, but he still described it as a brutal month and said that he's mentally exhausted because he's just putting more time and effort into this than basically he ever has before for the 500. So despite avoiding bump day, albeit by 0.004 miles per hour, he still feels like, I mean, basically it seemed like they're just having inquest after inquest, and every meeting is an inquest basically, and they're going through setup after setup, and he still doesn't feel like they've definitely found a solution. He said that they've got constant handling issues. It's not necessarily speed that is the problem. Said that the team has come on leaps and bounds, but still, for him to describe it as a brutal month, I think there's still more work to do there. So they raced all right last year, and I think they had team cars in 13th, 14th, 15th, but might need some circumstance to help them to that again, if we're to believe what Graham's saying.
Row ahead of them is Colton Herta, Brian Hunter-Reay, and Hollywood Harvey, as is now nicknamed. And we've got a feature from Ryan Hunter-Reay's son called Ryden, which is pretty good. Any guesses on Ryden Hunter-Reay's prediction to win, viewers? I'll give you a minute to guess. It's Ryan Hunter-Reay if you didn't guess. So there you are. If you wanted Ryden Hunter-Reay's win prediction, it's Ryan Hunter-Reay. That's a bit of a tongue twister, isn't it? Ryden.
It is.
That's a challenging one. So obviously two dry Ryan Boyd entries and Colton Hurst, who obviously had quite a significant crash on the first corner of his qualifying run, and obviously went up to his backup car and made the field in the end, which was a bit of a relief. Not too much. I mean, Jack Harvey had a bit of a laugh about all his nicknames as he was speaking to you. So he's also called the Muffin Man from Ryan Hunter-Reay's children, which is just funny.
I don't think we got the backstory on that.
No, not the Muffin Man. No, I think we didn't really get one on Hollywood Harvey either. He didn't really seem to know.
He said no. He didn't know where it had come from. Apart from Will Buxton was involved, and even Kevin Lee and Georgia Hennebury were also involved. So he wasn't quite sure, but he is embracing it now. But apparently there's a nice dynamic between Harvey and Hunter-Reay. That Harvey said that he's basically spent his month being choked out and RKO'd, which is a wrestling move by Ryan Hunter-Reay's kids. So clearly they're all getting on well. And I think he walked in on them watching Pirates of the Caribbean and said that his nickname should be Captain Jack, and somehow it ended up them being Captain Muffin. So Captain Muffin, Muffin Man, Hollywood Harvey, I don't know. But he seems to be he's really enjoying this month. I think there's been a lot of perspective that he's kind of gained from the fact that he's no longer full-time. And he said that even his sponsorship kind of commitments or media, he's just enjoying it all. And days where he maybe would be away from the track, he's making sure to spend it at the track, both Hunter-Reay and Harvey. As probably 50% of the field said it is a long race. So if we were to learn one thing from media day, it is a long race. I think the wider point to that is it's basically a bit of a patience game. And as always, you've got to be there in the last 20 laps. So Yeah, Hunter Ray, I think's kind of got a similar feeling. Just need to get through the field methodically. And just on Herter, I thought it was pretty interesting. Actually, he said that his backup car, which I think was a short oval car, if I recall correctly from the reporting on the broadcast last week, actually feels like being in the other car. He said that everything's been matched perfectly, which was surprising, but it's given him quite a lot of confidence. Monday practice, they didn't have to fine tune much and actually could just go to their planned run plan. I asked him a little bit more as well about that mentality that he spoke about, just being completely fearless and not scared of hitting the wall. And he said that ultimately, if he was afraid, he wouldn't have his job. So that was pretty interesting. But he's not lost speed in that backup. So don't rule Colton Herter out. He's starting one position further back than it. Oh no, where's he starting? He's starting 27th now with the penalties, isn't he?
He would be, yeah.
So he is one position higher than the lowest position that the Indy 500 has been won from. So don't rule him out.
One thing I found interesting is Townsend Bell was speaking this morning, and he said when he was splitting Indy 500 and being a pit reporter, he was trying to get too involved in the pit reporting side. He'd do the pit stop competition, blah, 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 blah. But he said Harvey's basically just taken a complete sidestep and you wouldn't even know he's a reporter, which he thinks is beneficial, which is an interesting insight. Obviously, Harvey and Hunter Ray both race with Ryan Reinbold Racing, who go into their 26th Indianapolis 500 and still haven't won. So Dennis Reinbold believes that on law of averages, their time should be soon. They've got a bit of work to do, but hey, this is Indianapolis.
Their race cars have looked all right. They were pretty sporty in Monday practice. If you to go off the timesheets aren't that relevant, but also they can be slightly relevant if you look at them in the respect of cars can be pretty quick and good in a tow. So I think they could make their way through the field. There's so many, like I can't remember who said it exactly, but the back 10 is pretty much as strong as the front 10. Really, I mean, there's some really good cars and drivers starting at the back.
The row ahead, we've got Nolan Siegel, who makes his first Indianapolis 500 start on the outside, obviously not after failing to qualify last year, whilst on the inside, Helio Castroneves makes his 25th Indianapolis 500 start. In the middle, you've got Kyle Kirkwood, who must be his fourth Indy 500 this year. So, bit of a mixture of experience there. I think we were quite disappointed with Kirkwood because we felt like he'd be really strong in qualifying, but just didn't seem to have the pace, which was slightly strange.
I'll just chime in there. He said it's a head scratcher, but the three drivers on this road basically concurred that there's been this, whether it's the hybrid system, that's been the major change obviously this year. There's just been this wild fluctuation basically between qualifying cars and race cars, and even the same car from day to day, because Kirkwood basically said the booster has turned up and they just started going slower every run through Fast Friday, through qualifying, and couldn't figure out why. Said they had a small floor issue. Castroneves found minor damage to the nose, but none of that was showing up on data as much as it was kind of a visual thing. So this was a row of kind of confusion as to where all the speed went.
Yeah, it's been like a weird theme where people just sort of just lost pace as they went through their qualifying runs. I mean, obviously that sort of happened to Coin. So yeah, that's really strange because no one knows really why that's happened for any of the people that's happened to. But hey ho, that's not for us to investigate because we definitely don't know the answer to that.
I have the answer to something though. It was Kirkwood that said that the back 10 was as good as the top 10. I think he said, with kind of relating to that back 10 being as strong as the top 10 point, to expect kind of a lot of drivers charging through the field. But I think it's just that whole point. If the field as a whole is so strong, it's going to be it's expected that it's going to be pretty cold, which is good conditions for racing. So yeah, there's a lot of drivers who had qualifying cars they weren't happy with, but the likes of Kirkwood, Castroneves, Siegel all seem to have really good race cars that they're really confident in. There aren't that many, maybe Ray Hall and squad aside, that seem to be particularly unhappy with their race cars. Maybe that's because they wouldn't say that, oh, I hate my car, I'm going to be rubbish. But seems to be a lot of confidence from back there.
Helio Castroneves is obviously still aiming to become the first driver to win 5 Indianapolis 500s, obviously 1050 this year. So if he did win, he would really write himself into the IndyCar record books the Indy 500 record books as one of his own. It'd be a remarkable achievement, especially at his twilight years. But no one gave him a chance in 2021, and we saw him win that race. So He hasn't qualified particularly well in recent years. He hasn't qualified inside the top 20 or so in the teens and above since that race in 2021. So, yeah, I guess a bit frustrating for Helio because he gives himself a lot more work to do than he usually has to do. But one nugget that I did like from Helio is obviously he's working in Chip Ganassi Racing now, and he says now he's in the same room with Scott Dixon. He definitely dyes his hair. So, and
Dixon denied this.
No, he didn't deny. He agreed with it eventually.
Yeah, so he denied it initially before backtracking and saying that he bleached it when he was younger. So he's not dyeing it at the moment, as Helio said, but he said that he bleached it in the past. And he also, Helio was on top form. He also said that Dario's wearing glasses, which shows that he's old. And he also said that number 25, his 25th Indy 500, that's my age. That's what he said.
Yeah, so again, we've got a lot of people to go through, so we won't spend ages on row 9 because row 8. Are we on row 8? I think we're on row 8, aren't we? We're on row 8, so we won't spend ages on row 8 because there's another 7 more rows to go with a lot more stories on it. But interesting little insight. That was quite a fun row. That was quite an enjoyable one. Siegel, Kirkwood,
that was good. Kirkwood, it must just be noticed as well, was feeling a little bit under the weather, so he's got a bit of recovering to do because it's been a busy week. It's not been a great week to be feeling a little bit unwell because they have in these few days between being off track just constant media day Thursday, visiting schools and all sorts of different events. So not ideal.
Then row 7, we've got Louis Foster making his Indy 500 debut. He's in the middle. Callum Milot's on the outside, and we've got Carl Larson on the inside. And again, a very mixed row there. I mean, you can probably guess who most of the attention was on in that press conference. I don't think it takes a genius to work out who that was.
Should we talk about the other two first?
Yeah, let's do it. From a premise perspective, I mean, Schwartzman very much stole the show compared to Callum Milot, but he seemed actually not too displeased about how he qualified. He said it was sort of better than any expectations that people had. He said they focused quite a lot on qualifying, and he said they got into the field pretty easily, which I guess is really reassuring because obviously there was a great concern that wouldn't happen. So I guess from their perspective, it was a great achievement for Schwartzman to get pole, but even for Ilott to make the field fairly comfortably. If you said that to him on Tuesday afternoon, I'm sure he'd bite your hand off. So probably very glad of that. And obviously Ilott sort of reminded him of a bit of a crazy 500 last year because he obviously basically had to abort the start effectively. He was in the pit lane when the race started, what he said. Then he had that incident with Kirk with the pits, got relegated again. So he had a bit of a crazy 500 last time around. So with
a broken weight jacker. He got basically from the back to 11th, which was impressive.
So maybe this year might be a little bit easier for him. So yeah, I mean, as I said, Ilott didn't really say too much because he was swamped by Larson, but
yeah. He did say he was happy in the pack, which I guess is encouraging. And I think he did also know that it'd probably be a pretty big challenge for teammate Schwartzman coming from pole, obviously having never done an oval race. We'll get on to Schwartzman in a bit, but nice seeing 2 Brits on that row, obviously with Foster as well. And I think again he was in this kind of Larson row graveyard shift, and obviously that was row 2 last year, I think, with Ferrucci and Rossi. But no, Foster, from the limiting stuff he was allowed to say, with Larson taking the majority of it reluctantly, was pretty much, he feels like he's got all right pace, follow quite closely. I mean, Rahal was the one who was kind of despondent out of the RLL guys. I think Di Francesco didn't seem too unhappy. Sato never seems unhappy. I don't think he's ever not smiling, a bit like Castro Neves. But yeah, the target, Foster said, is to push up to the front. I know he's probably not going to be thinking he can win on his first attempt, but wilder things have happened, and he said that he's been watching how races play out. I think kind of watching some tape and stuff. He's got his whole family out as well. So yeah, all the best to a good friend of the pod.
And then Carl Larson on the inside, it could be Tony Kanaan in the end. Weather's looking changing day to day, so it could be Tony Kanaan.
I think it's okay. At the moment, it seems like there's going to be morning rain, but it's going to pass to the south. We needed Kirkwood to tell us this. He's kind of become he said that I think he did mention the weather looks really good, but he's kind of become some de facto weatherman occasionally, Kyle Kirkwood.
The other Kyle certainly hopes the weather's better so he can actually do the double this year, unlike last year. Obviously aims to be the second driver to complete all 1,100 miles and head straight to the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte Motor Speedway after all is said and done at Indianapolis. It'd be really funny if he wins, because I presume they want him to drink the milk and kiss the bricks, but I mean, that would be taking time. So I wonder what would happen.
Maybe he goes to Charlotte, flies back, and does it at like midnight.
No, maybe he does it in the helicopter. He drinks the milk in the helicopter.
takes the bricks with him.
Yeah, go on. Well, no, he gets out of his car, takes his helmet off, kisses the bricks, gets in the helicopter, downs the milk in the helicopter. I mean, I don't know. It's a really... I mean, they must have to plan this out in case it does happen. I know it's probably unlikely, but surely they have to plan this out. So.
Yeah, I mean, but I think it was interesting today. He said that this year's been even crazier than his first attempt, which I found quite interesting. He said that he's basically had 3 straight days of people asking the same questions. And the biggest is about the amount of travel that he does and the differences from this year to last year. So don't ask Kyle Larson that anymore because he's tired of it. He said that he'll be happy once media day is done. Little does he know he's got another press conference with Aaron McLaren on Friday morning. So that's fun for him. But
will he turn up to it?
Well, that's a good point. That is a good point. But I think he did say it's been a bit more challenging this year. I think last year he said that the balance was there pretty much straight away, and he was a bit scared to use all of his tools like the weight jacker and stuff last year. Part of the reason being that he didn't want to interrupt what was actually a very good balance that he had from the outset. But he's kind of acknowledged that the hybrid is, well, he had 2 different sides to what he was talking about.
Well, Larson had one of my favourite quotes of the day, because it's just such a Larson quote. Where
the most quintessential Kyle Larson quote.
The quote was, so he was asked about, you've got the hybrid edition, how much you've sort of been using it, and how much of a big thing do you think it was? And we've talked about how just chill Kyle Larson is. The hybrid is I feel like hyped up as being this new crazy thing, but it's not a big deal either, I don't think. I don't know what these guys think, which is really funny. I'll get into in a minute. We just pull the paddle and go. When you want more changes, hit a button. It's not really like a big deal, which I found really amusing. He just didn't care. The other thing, I don't think he actually knew who Louis Foster was.
No, I don't. I mean, he worked with Callum last year, I suppose, at Aaron McLaren, but he probably doesn't know who the majority are, to be honest. But yeah, the flip side of what he was talking about, the hybrid, that its actual impact isn't a big deal, but I think he did acknowledge that the balance has been a bit more difficult this year, which is maybe where I was seeing what he described as smaller crashes. I mean, it's amazing that, I mean, no mere mortal would describe them as small crashes, but in an IndyCar respect, he got away with it, I would say. But yeah, he said that actually he's not a believer in practice. He was speaking about this after Monday practice as well, that he just feels like practice doesn't actually set you up that well, and he has so much to learn from actually in the race. I think the restart mishap from last year, I don't know whether it's on his mind, but he's mentioned it a few times. But he also said that, you know, he nailed a few restarts after that and gained spots on them, so not too worried. He's not worried about, and he's never worried about anything, that guy.
He's so amusing.
But if this is so still one of the big story, this is still one of the big storylines. Obviously, if he can complete the 1,100 miles, especially if, as he said, this is possibly his last attempt at this until maybe he's not in Cup full time anymore, which will be probably a good 10-15 years away, you would think. So, yeah, big story to follow, and I just really hope that weather doesn't interrupt it.
Yeah, I hope he does it, and I think he will do it. I'll be confident that he will do it. So. Yeah, just gotta hope there's not too many cautions, and I guess he must want to win, but it probably makes it a bit tricky if he does win to win this. So I don't know what his thoughts on that are. We'll have to find out. Anyway, the row ahead is Stingray Rob, Christian Rasmussen, and Devin DiFrancesco. So quite an inexperienced row there. I mean, Rob's got 2 starts, Rasmussen's got 1, and DiFrancesco's got 2. So that probably, I guess, is the most. No, the row behind. No. Is the row behind more inexperienced? Larson's got 1 and Eilert must have 3. So So ignore what I just said. Robin Rasmussen and DiFrancesco, who are still relatively inexperienced, are all on the same row. So we'll start off with... Who do we start? Let's start off with Christian Rasmussen on the outside. Obviously had a couple of crashes this month, both at turn 2. I say they were crashes, they were more just glorified spins, to be honest, especially the first one. The
first one, all that happened in the first one, he said he got minor crack in the rear wing, and that was it. But obviously that's enough at Indy, but still. Yeah,
still. I mean, Rasmussen's always been one to watch, especially last year, because he's very aggressive. He upsets a lot of people, but he is feisty. He's always
Box
fun to
office.
watch. He's him, Ferrucci, and Sato, I think, are the top three. Just
I would
go
say
big
so.
or go home. They're always entertaining to watch.
Yeah, this is actually that's a good time to plug. I did a piece on the DIVEBOMB site about basically getting to know the 33 drivers. So if you're listening to this and don't know as much about IndyCar at the 500, I'd recommend reading that. If you are listening to this, you probably don't need to get to know the drivers, to be honest. You probably already know them. But I made those exact remarks about these three drivers in particular were the ones that I used words along the lines of gutsy, bold, and box office.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Rasmussen and Rob, we didn't actually get loads from, just because I feel like there's probably not too much to ask them, just because they're both still relatively inexperienced. But just sort of Rasmussen again probably didn't give too much away. I mean, he talked about that spin, which was obviously quite interesting, finding out there was that crack in the rear wing. He said there was 33 laps on his tyres at that point, though. So obviously that's sort of ended the stint sort of time. So.
It was interesting because I think he that was the first one that he had. Was it last Thursday, maybe? I can't remember the exact day. Sometime in the first week, that one anyway. I think it was Thursday. But then after he had the spin on Monday, that was with the same setup. So initially, I think they thought the first one was because of the old tyres, but actually, ultimately, they realised there was something fundamentally wrong with the setup they were using. So that's obviously going to leave them with a bit of work to do. Carb day. And yeah, just other interesting things. I think he was speaking a bit about the Ed Carpenter Racing project, said, classic cliche, Rome wasn't built in a day.
I like that quote.
He said that the results are kind of getting better and better, and he said he's been calmer in his approach this year. I don't know whether that counts on track, because obviously we've had some fiery radios already of drivers upset with him in practice. He feels like they are better than qualifying showed. It wasn't a great qualifying by their standards, really, given VK's usually in, well, top 7 has been for the last 5 years. But Rob, I think the interesting stuff from that standpoint is that, well, the most interesting stuff from Rob is actually related to Connor Daly and Daly's leadership, which seems to have been pretty crucial, pretty impressive at Hunkos Hollinger Racing. He said that Rob's been using identical setups to Daly, and Daly's really helped him to kind of tick some of the boxes through practice. So there's a good dynamic going on there. I know there was the whole thing before Rob joined, and Con had been a bit vocal about, how certain drivers like Rob maybe were less deserving of being in the series. I don't know whether he said it in as many words, but that was kind of what he said. But I think they're both growing to really respect each other, and we know what a lovely guy Rob is. And he gave one of my favourite quotes of the day about his kind of scheduling around the 500.
Yes, so I asked him this.
Go on, you take it away.
Because he spoke to us, I think he must have been year one. He just
2
said
years
the
ago.
off-track stuff was so difficult and he couldn't really balance his time. So I asked him about this because it's interesting how it's changed 2 years since. And first he said the schedule was way better because his mama Joe, which I think he referred to the last one.
He did.
With him, how his mum just does everything for him. And I'll read his quote for quote. So he said, whether it was talking to someone about donut at their donut shop or someone that was with Fox Sports, you name it, we did every interview that we could that rookie season. I remember I did an interview in the car driving from one speaking event to another while eating my lunch. I was like, okay, that's it. I'm not doing it again. He's now scheduled naps to his routine though. So
good stuff. And he seems to feel like his car's weird because he said that basically his car's quick, but without kind of a good balance. And usually if your car is slow, you can quite easily find a good balance. Like we saw with the Dale Coyne cars that were fighting for that last spot in the field, that they actually looked like they had a decent balance and felt pretty good. They just didn't have the speed. So Rob's is kind of a bit of the inverse of the norm, that he said that his car's absolutely rapid, but there's been a fundamental issue throughout, and it's not been bad enough, but it finally got bad enough that they could actually figure out what the issue was in Monday practice. So it's reached that crescendo, and it now feels like actually they can really start digging into what was going wrong, and Rob can start to feel comfortable in his rapid car rather than uncomfortable in what appears to be a pretty sporty car.
So Devin DiFrancesco starts 16th. I'll be honest, Devin DiFrancesco isn't a particularly in-depth talker, unlike his teammate Graham Rahal next to him. DiFrancesco's had slightly more pace than I thought. He said he thinks at least he's been strong in terms of race running and traffic running. I don't think his teammate agrees, but
I mean, I'm looking at my notes here, and he said we all have strong cars, which was definitely not what Graham Rahal believed.
Personally, I'm taking Graham's word for it more than I take Di Francesco's.
A little bit more
for it.
experienced.
So yeah, that was funny. But I mean, I didn't get loads and loads from Dev. I mean, he's quite generic with his answers. So
I mean, he said we're ready, so that's what we could glean from him.
We'll see how ready he is come Sunday. We'll move on to row 5, who was Ed Carpenter and Kevin Simpson, who were later joined by Santino Ferrucci. So we'll start off with... Who do we start off with? We'll start off with Ferrucci, because he was in the same press conference as Di Francesco was, and he lines up on the outside 15th place. Didn't know this, but he's led the lap in all but one of his Indy 500 starts. He's obviously never finished outside the top 10 at Indianapolis. And he's always won, sort of in more recent years, who you're back, but he didn't... He had a difficult first couple of days to Ferrucci, which I think slowed him down a little bit. He said he really felt for his crew because they split the car 8 times now, which apparently is supposed to only do 3 times. So fair play to Santino's Ferrucci crew. That must be a little bit of a nightmare to manage all of that. So
they've dug deep this month. They've dug deep. I mean, he was asked, wasn't he, if he can you summarize your month? And he basically said he doesn't want to. I don't think he could because basically just so much has gone on. But actually, Monday practice, which, I mean, the kind of last week's practice sessions, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, had a bit of pack, traffic running, race simulation stuff. It was not until Monday, really, that Ferrucci first got out in the pack. So, yeah, that kind of shows how uncomfortable they've been, how much time they've spent back kind of soul-searching.
Ferrucci was asked about how the Team Penske changes could affect the alliance. He said probably it won't make any difference to them because it's still under their roof. Otherwise... Ferrucci was with Rahal, and Rahal was a great talker. So any press conference you've got Graham Rahal next to you, you probably won't get many words in because he is a fantastic talker.
I've said this many a time. I think Graham Rahal would be my dream podcast guest. I think we'd be able to get do like a 24-hour stream with him, and I think we'd only have to ask about 3 or 4 questions.
Townsend Bell as well is arguably worse. He's a rambler, is the word I'd use for Townsend Bell. Anyway, Back to Santino Ferrucci. One funny thing is both him and David Malukas were asked for stories about AJ Foyt, like they have a best story, and they both said not one they'd like to share. So that was funny, but they both sort of said how it is working with AJ Foyt and how much of an honour it is to work with obviously such an IndyCar legend, winning 4 Indianapolis 500s. I will just tease. Please, everyone, hold on, especially if you're British, to the David Malukas segment, because we have a bombshell. And that's all I'll say for now. We'll move on to Ed Carpenter, who starts 14th. Obviously, this is going to be his only race of the year, which is different to previous years as usual. Obviously, the only owner-driver in the field, obviously driving for his own team, Ed Carpenter Racing. He says that the cars feel very, very similar the past about the hybrid, but just the operating window is a little bit smaller to what it was previously. Obviously, Carpenter's, I think, done this is 22nd Indianapolis 500, so he's got a lot of experience. Only Helio trumps him. Maybe Dixon might trump him as well, actually, for Indy 500 experience, but it's not many who trump Ed Carpenter for Indy 500 experience. He was asked about the Penske situation, because it's a bit different for him being an owner, but he sort of took a similar stance to you, where that sort of has ruined the storyline of the month, and that it's all about Penske rather than the weekend that we're going into. And I mean, he didn't want to say much. And I must also say as well, Rahal's usually on the most outspoken on these topics, and he wasn't even asked about it, which I think to me really just shows that the entire paddock is really tired of it now and just wants to focus on the Indy 500. I don't want to hear the word attenuator again, if possible, after this podcast. It would be nice. Attenuator. I'm going to bring up every week now. Ever. Honestly. I asked Ed about how he thought the team were doing, because obviously they made quite a lot of changes in the off-season. He said they were heading in a good direction, didn't have the results they'd hoped from the Rasmussen car, but he's happy with what Rossi's doing on his car, and they are on an upward trajectory at the minute. So that was a little nugget there from Carpenter. Obviously, his role is a lot different to all the other 32 drivers participating in the race on Sunday. And then we have Kevin Simpson on the inside. He starts 13th. Obviously, had quite a major crash on Friday, which we briefly asked him about. I mean, it wasn't massive compared to others, but it was still obviously quite a big crash. I mean, at the time, it was pretty huge because the car lifted off the ground. I think I'm gonna work on a feature maybe to put out on Saturday, just about, because we spoke to a few drivers about the crashes and how the cars are a bit more on a knife edge this year. So I think that's something to watch out for in the race as well. Simpson just said it was a tough situation with the crash, and he said he felt really sketchy going into three, tried to do stuff with his tools, and then bail out once he completed his lap, but didn't quite get there in the end. He said he trusts his team with his life, so he decided to make sure he got up to speed as quickly as he could and did my job and put it 13th for the end. And he said he was pretty happy with that in a spare car, which I think he should be. Obviously got a good draw, but still a good effort, all things considered, for Kevin Simpson. And also, his neck is absolutely huge. If you want to see a huge neck,
he looks jacked. He looks been in the gym.
Look at Kevin Simpson's neck. It's absolutely massive. It's huge. So that's the other thing I got from him. He's got a huge neck now. He's
another one of the drivers of kind of what appeared to be the minority that weren't too happy. I don't think his backup car's completely in a position yet where he's happy with it. I think he said the crash reset them. So they're one of the teams. I think Rob said that carb day practice is critical. Final practice on Friday as this episode drops. Simpson was in a similar boat that they've got work to do, but he's feeling some momentum. He's improving in his second IndyCar season, and yeah, hopes to continue that for the 500.
Then the front, then we had maybe my favourite row. One of them was Connor Daly, Alexander Rossi, and Scott McLaughlin. Any press conference with Connor Daly and is always slightly chaotic.
He's just so happy. Like every little thing, he just does like this hilarious, like hysterical sort of laugh. Oh, it's brilliant. I love it.
Yeah, and he's the worst because he just starts talking and they'll just get completely off topic.
He did give my favourite quote of the day, actually. He said, I've not got the full quote, but I've got it slightly noted down, that he said something about wild number stats and moon signs, and also cold days and pit box numbers. I don't really know the context for it, but he was blabbering on about moon signs, whatever they are.
He gave a shout out to Parkside Cars as well, which was pretty funny. And he got Alexander Rossi autographs, who was sitting next to him. They also went into both McLaughlin and Daly. I mean, Rossi was pretty silent throughout all of this. Went into great detail about the pranks that have been happening. So some of you might have seen Colton Herter's video where he was saying goodnight to IndyCar drivers. It's absolutely hilarious.
I asked him about that, and he said that he's not on TikTok. It was his girlfriend's idea. And he kind of really I thought he was going to play into it a bit more, but he kind of downplayed it quite a lot, which partially makes me quite suspicious of him.
Yeah, he's up to more pranks. But McLaughlin had a porta potty outside his motorhome, which he actually said he was a bit annoyed about because obviously his wife and pretty newly born daughter is in that motorhome. So if there was a bit of an incident, if they had to get out, could have been quite bad. But anyway, it was all right in the end. He said he respected the prank game, but they got to think a little bit. Whoever it is, they're going to go down hard. And he didn't say who it was, but then he said something about the goodnight video, which basically very much implied that it was Colton Herter.
But I still don't think he was certain.
He said that we don't know the pre-question because the microphone wasn't on it, but he said yes, it's a guy that said goodnight to everyone. I thought straight away it was him. But then he said, I don't think it was. Seems too lame for Colton. So, I don't know.
But he said he moved it himself, didn't he? He took it upon himself to... I don't know whether he moved them to someone else's bus or not. I got the impression he might have done. But he said that just pissed him off more because he was already just annoyed about everything and everything. So,
yes.
Yeah. Another interesting note from McLaughlin, actually, just reading through my notes, just quickly going back to the Penske stuff, is that Ben Bretzman's role has been elevated, obviously, for this race, and they've got one of the best driver-engineer relationships, I think, in the series. I think that whole group is really tight-knit on the number 3 car. Obviously, McLaughlin had a massive crash on Sunday morning ahead of Fast 12 in the practice session, so he's in a backup car. But obviously, Team Penske actually had a new Speedway backup car, which obviously a lot of teams don't have the benefit of. But McLaughlin has a very good relationship with Ben Bretzman. It says that they've got much more than a working relationship. They're really good friends, and that he even plays video games with his engineer, who is now, we say, he's his strategist for this weekend as well. So
yes. McLaughlin and Daly also spoke about something else, but I can't really remember what it was. So I think we can probably skip past it, to be honest.
Can we?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's really that important to anything.
Something about your beloved Knicks losing to their beloved Pacers, or not their beloved Pacers. McLaughlin's beloved Knicks as well losing to Daly's beloved Pacers.
It wasn't really wasn't really that relevant to the press conference, I don't think. So we can not relevant to this episode. It's not like we've been talking about it on this podcast for 2 weeks or anything. So we can brush over it. No, we can't. It's annoying. It's annoying. We completely threw it. I'm so angry. There's only game one. There's still 6 more games to go. Hopefully,
that was something else fueling McLaughlin's anger. Actually, on the racing stuff, Connor Daly. I think I said this on our Tuesday episode. I think he has as good a shot as he's ever had, and I think he thinks that as well. And I think he genuinely feels like he can win this race. With that small Hunkas-Hollinger racing team have delivered him a rocket ship. I think they had a few issues on Tuesday, but he said that ever since, whether qualifying trim, race trim, it's actually been a joy to drive. And he said that, I mean, he feels like the race is going to be must-see TV with kind of the cooler temperatures, expects just as much overtaking as last year, which I guess was a fear with the hybrid, that it might become a bit processional. But I think that, especially because we've seen what a knife edge it can be on and how many mistakes are being made, that there's going to be opportunity in this race. But yeah, Daly sees no reason why he can't fight for the win, which is really impressive. And kind of rounding off that row as well on Rossi, he didn't really say much. He wasn't really asked much.
That's a shock, yeah.
But he said he feels like he's also got as good a shot as any, and the race is now officially sold out, grandstand sellout. Rossi said he's been waiting for a sellout so he can drink the milk again, because the last race that sold out was 2016 when he won as a rookie. But I think the more impressive thing this time is this isn't some big anniversary. This is 109, and it's sold out as well. So positive momentum for the series, and maybe Rossi will win again on a sellout. Who knows? I think he feels capable.
So row ahead, we've got Marcus Ericsson on the outside, who seems to be enjoying things. Said it's like a Swedish summer at Indianapolis. He said he'll go for a swim later. His whole family's coming to the Indy 500. Said last time that happened was in 2022. What happened in 2022? Well, Marcus Ericsson won his maiden Indianapolis 500. They tried to claim they were the young row, did Ericsson, Lundgaard and Malukas, before they quickly realised that they're not the youngest row, because they might be the youngest row on average, but Lundgaard and Malukas seem to think they were the youngest drivers, completely forgetting about both Simpson and Siegel, who are several years younger than them, which is pretty amusing.
Just talking of reminding Ericsson of 22 as well. He told you that he's pretty much as happy with this month as he was in 22. It reminds me a bit of that, and that essentially it's just every session has been solid. The car's been solid. He's been happy with it, and that's what it takes at Indy. As we kind of had last week from what Newgarden said to us. It's very hard to have a perfect month. So just be solid, be in the game. Ericsson was another one to tell us it is indeed a long race. It's indeed a long race. So, I mean,
Ericsson also said that he approached this year a little bit differently, because, as I said to him last year, probably couldn't have really gone any worse. Apart from him maybe being bumped was the only way his month could have gone worse. So he sort of said he took it step by step, building up for race day, which is what happened in 2022. And he felt like last year they rushed it, for example. So, I mean, Ericsson was quite surprisingly the quickest Andretti by some distance. So that was quite interesting. Then we've got Lundgaard in the middle, obviously his first Indy 500 of Arrow McLaren. So his best starting position by an absolute mile and a half. I mean, Lundgaard didn't say too much. He spoke about golfing Bubba Watson, but to be honest, that doesn't really interest me. I don't know if it interests you, but it doesn't interest me. I don't know.
I don't know anything about golf, and I've heard of Bubba Watson, and that's quite cool. There was a video of him hitting marshmallows into Kyle Larson's mouth, so that was interesting. Yeah,
it's a bit strange, isn't it? But hey ho, doesn't matter. Lundgaard didn't really say too much when he was so obsessed with the golf. He probably had about a 5-minute lecture on his golf.
He's a big golf fan. I think his girlfriend's a golfer as well. So
yeah, she is.
Yeah. He's a big golf guy, but he feels like the number 7's got good baseline for any conditions. This is 20 positions higher than he's ever started for an Indy 500, given his previous attempts with RLL. So I think he's in a good position. I'm not sure he's got it to win this race, because he's never really had that good a car on an oval before, but he's in a good position. He's in, he acknowledged he's in a different situation to what he's kind of been used to. So, yeah, interesting.
And then we had David Malukas rounding off the row, and he was starting off asking what family would be here this weekend. He said he's got a lot of friends, because he sort of dropped this revelation. Both of us had no idea about that. He grew up in England and he spent a few years there, and that's why he's got an interest in football. That's what it's called, football. And a lot of his English friends are coming over. It's their first time in the States, And then we were like, oh, hang on, we had no idea that Malukas lived in England, so I had to press him a little bit more on that.
Bombshell.
He said he lived there for their karting years. And then I tried to find out where he lived. He said Grimsby was where he spent most of his time, which was unexpected. I mean, there's probably nicer places to spend your life in England, but he said partly in Leeds, Manchester, and London, but mainly in Grimsby, of all places.
A journeyman. He's a journeyman of a temporary Englishman.
Yeah.
So that was an astonishing revelation. Yeah, he was another that kind of believed that his car was in pretty good position, said it was very strong and good in traffic. So Malukas starting from 7th could be a dark horse. I feel like Daly's like the ultimate dark horse, but maybe Malukas is kind of second in command in that regard.
We'll then move on to row number 2, which is a Chip Ganassi Racing, Meyer Shank Racing Alliance row of Alex Palou, Felix Rosenqvist, and Scott Dixon. Scott Dixon will become the driver of the most career starts in IndyCar history on Sunday. So what a momentous time to do it. He's timed that very well as Scott Dixon. So,
and he's already led more laps than any other driver at the 500, still only with 1 win. He's kind of lost that race in heartbreaking fashion in every conceivable fashion. So it feels about time. Maybe it would be a properly... Again, we talk about all these amazing stories. Dixon winning it on the race that he becomes the all-time record holder for amount of starts in the series would be quite impressive after all the years of hurt. Dixon spoke actually a little bit about the alliance with Meyer Shank Racing and said that it's been pretty relaxed. It's been very resourceful and it's been open with no egos. At which point he joked, apart from Helio, but he said that Helio's been bad at filling in sheets and forms on his computer. But no, otherwise I think that alliance is working pretty well. They've been pretty close knit. I think Rosenqvist said that there's a lot to be learned and a lot of depth there, and it's quite hard to know how much of an impact it's had on Meyer Shank compared to what they had with Andretti because of the big change to the car, obviously with the hybrid. But feels pretty happy with it. Yeah, obviously we had the quips from Dixon getting back at what Castro and Evers were saying about hair dye and all of that stuff. And Dixon just kind of remarked as well about how small the margins were. He brought up Prema off his own back about what a good story that was, basically, and just showing, yeah, the competitiveness within this field that is kind of the reason why everyone's saying this is possibly going to be a really, really good race. I thought it was also interesting, actually. Dixon said he did use Castro Neves' setup in one practice session just to kind of get a feel there. Rosenqvist, he said that he's definitely had cars that handle worse, so I guess that's encouraging. Obviously, Alex Palou comes into this having won 4 of the first 5 races this season. The other obviously finished second to Kyle Kirkwood, the only non-Palou race winner of the year. He is chasing obviously his 3rd successive championship, his 4th championship in 5 years, and only his 6th year in the series, which is just incredible. But he told me last week, obviously, that he feels like his career would not be a success without winning the Indy 500. And he admitted that, I mean, he's got a 97-point lead in the championship coming into the fortnight. And he did say that he feels like the 500 is a different animal and it's kind of something else external to the championship. And I feel like Palou has such a buffer in the championship that maybe he can afford to take a few more risks. But yeah, he feels like this car's good. I think last year he said that it was probably the worst car he had, at least in terms of speed, and he still finished top 6, top 5.
Finished 5th.
Which is still pretty impressive. He said that 23 was probably the fastest he had when he was on pole, got hit in the pits by VK, came back from the back of the field up to finish 4th. But another funny note from the day actually was there's a video did the rounds in the Fast 12 as Penske were making the changes to their cars in pit lane, and Palou was standing in front of Newgarden looking and smirking at it, and he admitted that he said at the time he basically asked them if they were trying to cheat. And he said he tried to be funny and it was a joke. Little did he know the saga that would come afterwards. So that was quite amusing.
And we'll move on to the front row of Pathé Awards, Takuma Sato and Robert Schwartzman. Now, I think I had my favourite ever press conference moment in this press conference with O'Ward and Schwartzman. So just to give you some context, the rookies basically it's like a tradition when the rookies milk a cow, but it doesn't seem to be that well followed for whatever reason. So Schwartzman was asked about milking the cow as a rookie, and then O'Ward chimed in saying, I'm jealous I wanted to do that. I've never milked a cow. My guess would be because he did in 2020 when obviously COVID was around, which is when he was a rookie, so he obviously never they probably didn't do it then. Then Schwartzman was saying that's when you need to have good luck winning the Indy 500 because the woman that sorts out this cow came to him and said the people who didn't milk the cow have never won the Indy 500 and they usually didn't finish. It's bad luck, whoever didn't milk the cow. But then Sato chimed in and said he didn't do it and he's run it twice. So that woman's obviously quite clearly wrong because Sato has won it twice despite not milking his cow, apparently. Anyway, O'Ward was just going on a tangent here and said, I'm going to find a cow and I'm going to milk it tonight. And the Schwartzman said, you can always ask for milking a cow maybe next year. Before O'Ward came back with, I'm going to get my own cow. Schwartzman was trying to be somewhat serious here amongst O'Ward's carnage and said, the cow's name is Indy. I've got to meet her. She was very calm and cute. First, you need to pet her a bit, get comfy with her. And then O'Ward basically just said, are they ready to just... And put your own interpretation here. And both Schwartzman and O'Ward just started absolutely dying with laughter. I don't really know if Sato knew what was going on.
Oh, absolutely no chance he knew what was going on.
But the other two were absolutely just dying with laughter in the corner. It really reminds me, if you've ever watched it, of the one at Silverstone of F1 where Norris and Ricciardo had gone about pubes. And they were just laughing their heads off. It's really similar to that. O'Ward was absolutely dying as well as Schwartzman about milking.
So true.
So...
That was amazing. Honestly,
very
that
funny.
was just.
And then the Award asked
incredible.
Schwartzman if he tried the milk, which is obviously extremely dangerous because it's not pasteurized or anything. So
I think it all started going downhill when Schwartzman said he wanted to pat and get comfy with the cow, which was just hilarious. He said the cow was very calm and cute. So Schwartzman's just. I think he's brilliant. He's just such a. I don't know. He just radiates positivity, and I think the word I used is kind of he's effervescent. But O'Ward now really wants to find a cow to milk as soon as possible if it's going to give him some good luck. So, yeah, that was funny. But we should probably talk a bit about the actual racing aspects of the front row, shouldn't we?
No, it's not as entertaining, is it? Not as good podcast content. I mean, O'Ward, we'll start off with, he seems really, really confident. I think he probably comes in as one of the 2 or 3 favourites coming to the race. I think on the front row, he's certainly got the best chance. Rahul's already said Sato's car doesn't seem very good. And I think Schwartzman sort of knows as well that it's going to be difficult for Prema to sort of maintain this pace into race day. O'Ward also said it's pretty long, just a few references, but he sort of made the emphasis that every 500 is completely different, but knowledge is priceless, and obviously that's going to be really important for him. He's also asked if Newgarden's car being illegal meant anything to him from last year. He said he wouldn't want to win an Indy 500 a year afterwards, because I mean, it doesn't feel right. I don't think he really likes winning St. Petersburg in the way he did either. So I would also give an excellent quote because Arthur was asked about the rocket ship engine we've spoken about a couple of times in the podcast. And then O'Ward, before I could get well, and just chimed in, the motor is between his legs, mate.
That was brilliant. But I think it's worth touching actually on Sato, just transitioning to that. Because if Graham Rahal had kind of made comments last year that he has a rocket ship engine, and maybe that was why he was so much better than the rest. But Sato said, truth, the HRC guys do an amazing job. And he said that actually his engine was the 4th strongest against his teammates last year. So I don't know if he means the 4th strongest RLL one, which is basically the least strong RLL one, or whether the 4th strongest of the Hondas. But he basically said that, IndyCar, I guess they kind of homologate the engines, and he said they don't do that, and they don't have engines that are better than the others. I know obviously there's going to be differences and there might be some inconsistencies, but nothing too major. So yeah, that was kind of all we got from Sato. I think he was kind of in a similar vein to Rahal, kind of said that his race car's not exactly where he wants it. So yeah, that'll be interesting having him on the front row, and then also obviously Robert Schwartzman starting from the front row, starting from pole, having never competed in an oval race, for a team that's never competed in an oval race, that are still kind of bustling up and getting up to speed, I feel, in the pits as well. Monday practice, Schwartzman's first really intense race running. He was practicing not too deep in the pack. He was running at the head of the pack, and when he was at the head of the pack, he was pretty good in clean air, which obviously we saw in the qualifying. He was really, really strong, obviously, in those solo car runs. But when he was getting past, he was dropping back quite a lot. He had a major lockup coming into the pits as well. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I don't think you can really expect Schwartzman to hold on and win. I said this on Tuesday's episode. You absolutely can't write him off because, I mean, Prema have taught us not to write him off when people, including me, were predicting them to get bumped, and then Schwartzman goes and puts it on pole. I mean, still not quite got the words for that story. I don't think I ever will. I think that will just be remembered in Indianapolis folklore for years to come. But Schwartzman said he's happy and he's tired at the same time. I think it's been quite a busy few days, obviously, of commitments and interviews and podcasts and stuff. He said those bloody podcasts.
Screw it. End all IndyCar podcasts.
But no, he said that he might have to make another song about the Indy 500. I think he said this after qualifying as well. Have Colton Herta and Will Power on the drums, as they're both drummers. So he said that the song doesn't leave him now. It's all he's getting asked about. But no, I thought it was interesting. He said as well, like, he's really liking the quite supportive environment in the US. Will Power during qualifying was giving Prema advice, for instance, how to adapt to cool conditions and stuff, and said that it's quite different to the tension that there is over in Europe. So yeah, he still said that the achievement of pole is unbelievable. I don't think it's quite set in yet for anyone, to be quite honest. So can't expect masses from him in the race. It's going to be a big learning curve, but stranger things have happened.
So that's all the 33 drivers who will be participating in this year's Indianapolis 500. Your win prediction pre-season was, do you remember?
I think it was Newgarden.
Back it? Still?
No, I don't back it.
Okay, who would you go with now?
I'm going to go with Palou.
Okay.
I just feel like he's had a really consistent race car throughout the kind of 3 days of practice last week, where there was a bit of pack running, and again on Monday he was top of the times. He's starting on the second row. I feel like he could control this race, to be honest.
I said McLaughlin pre-season, and I'm going to have to stick by it because I'm so confident in it. I'm going to have to stick by it. So.
I mean, his backup car is not like, say, a Meyershank Racing, who have gone to a road course car. It is a carefully cured speedway car as well. So that was feeling pretty good, I think, on Monday's session. So yeah, I definitely think McLaughlin can win this race from 10th for sure.
So it's hard to pick out a favourite. I think it's probably between O'Ward and Palou. I'd say the two current favourites, just based on where they're starting and the fact they have looked pretty strong all month long. So those are the early two to back, I think. If anyone's in that, we probably spoke about this last week. It's really interesting to see what the best stories are, and I think I've decided mine now. I think number one is definitely Helio. Drive for 5 would be.
Agree. I think we're pretty much on the same page with these.
For me, I'll probably go Larson number 2. I know it's
if he was to win.
If he was to win, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Then after that, probably Newgarden winning 3 in a row.
Agree again.
To do it. Here, then I'd probably go Connor Daly, just because it's an Indianapolis native not winning it in ages.
120 races for Daly as well, and he's never won a race. So if he was to go and break that duck at the Indy 500, his home race as an Indiana native would be amazing.
Then here, I think it's pretty interchangeable.
I can't remember what I said. I gave 5, I think, on Tuesday. I can't remember exactly.
I think it's pretty interchangeable for me between O'Ward and Palou, because obviously Palou, you feel like if he wins this, it effectively seals his legacy, because this was the one thing that was missing. But from O'Ward's side, he's had all these years of heartbreak, and if he wins this, he's turned around all those sort of demons that have escaped him for years. So to sort of conquer it all. So those are the 6 I'd say would be huge.
Yeah.
Huge. And any Penske now.
Yeah, that's also true. I almost think Newgarden might just elevate it. Probably that elevates him above Larson, the fact he's starting down there for me. It's just very hard to come up with one of the best stories, because, like, surely a better story than anything is like Stingray Robb goes and wins it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like someone just completely random from mid-pack goes and wins it. Christian Rasmussen, Ed Carpenter, kind of in the same vein as Daly. He's not born in Indiana, but he's been lifelong Hoosier, I'm pretty sure. So many good stories. Well, whoever wins this race is a great story, and that's what we love so much about it.
We'll find out on Sunday. If it's rain delayed our time, if it's going to be a good story or not. But
don't even contemplate rain delays. It's not going to happen.
No. It's a brave thing to say publicly.
Famous last words.
You said Robert Schwartzman would be bumped from the field last week, so you got to be careful with your words on this podcast. Otherwise, you're in deep danger. So, but yeah, we said we record on Thursday, so we'll probably go out Friday morning, carb day, and obviously the infamous, well, not infamous, the very famous pit stop competition, and the Wiener 100.
Oh, brilliant!
Tomorrow. We haven't mentioned the Wiener 100, hosted by Oscar Mayer and his massive hot dog cars. So
it is brilliant. I think there's 6 of them, aren't there, from representing different kind of regions of the United States.
I wonder how quick they are. They can't be that quick, surely.
Well, they've been practicing in the rain today, which we know is obviously not something you do on an oval, so they can't be that quick.
Yeah, that's true. I wonder how many laps. It can't be many laps. It must be like 2 or 3 laps or something.
It's being streamed on, is it Fox's social channels, I believe?
Quite possibly. So if you want some slightly bizarre entertainment in Indianapolis this afternoon, as of when this episode goes live, you can watch the Wiener 100, hosted by Oscar Mayer. So that's a little funny thing to come out the last couple of days. Quite a funny day, actually. So, but no, I mean, I'm obviously really looking forward to the race. Obviously, last year really set the standard, and obviously it's never really a bad Indianapolis 500, is there? But
absolutely not. Bring this on. It's funny. Like, I always use the analogy of Christmas. May is like that Christmas period. You've got Advent as you're building up to Christmas, and obviously, I mean, I guess every day of the Indy 500 fortnight is like Christmas for us, but it obviously builds up to the Indy 500 race day. The 25th being race day as well this year, I think makes it all the more, well, that analogy ring all the more true. But kind of the closer you get to Christmas, the build up to Christmas is great, and the build up to the 500 is kind of that same sort of great. And then you kind of get closer to it. You're actually kind of like, I just don't want it to be over.
Yeah, but then you have the winner, and it's on the massive high. And
well, but then the other thing is you kind of get past 500, and I mean we've been working pretty hard and writing a lot of stories and stuff. Some pretty late nights. I think I've seen 4 a.m. a few times in the last couple of weeks. So it'll probably get to the 26th, 27th, and we'll be absolutely poofed and knackered. Need to just sleep.
And then you've got a race weekend that weekend, so you go straight into Detroit. There's no time to.
We'll moan about that next week. We'll moan about how. Well, yeah. I mean, we've got nothing to moan about. It's the drivers who have something to moan about, having to go from 5 successive weeks on track, 2 successive weeks of just relentlessness into another race. It's not even an oval. Yeah, we're getting sidetracked. We can talk about that next week. We moan about that every year.
Yeah, but it's a worthy moaning point.
We don't want to end this podcast on a low. With the Indy 500.
Well, how are we going to end? How are we going to recover this podcast then to end it on an absolute barnstorming high to get all these listeners excited for the Indy 500 on Sunday?
We have a mixed up field. Conditions look absolutely perfect for a phenomenal race. 350,000 plus people are going to be there in a sellout. Biggest single day sporting event in the world. Tune in. Sky Sports F1 in the UK, Fox, Network Fox with a big build-up in the US as well. Show IndyCar some support. It's going to be a special one.
Last time we have the Memorial Day triple as well, with Monaco moving next year, so it's the last day we have this sort of box office day.
Of course. No, it's going to be box office. There's nothing more to say than that. It's just been a month of just relentless storylines, and I mean the race it's not going to disappoint after the month that we've had.
There's one last phrase to say, which is, this is and always will be the greatest spectacle in racing. We better have Will Buxton come out with some barnstorming diff-style quote to get you pumped up when they come to green. Pressure's on there for Will Buxton to come up with some...
Oh, I think I must say, actually, he's nailed it this month. He's been absolutely awesome. I think his qualifying call was exceptional, and I think the excitement of this being his first full Indy 500 experience as well is coming through on the broadcast, and I just love that. I think he's aced it. I mean, 40 plus hours on TV in like the space of 7 days is amazing, really.
Cool. We will leave it there. We will be back with you on Tuesday to reflect on somebody's life will have changed forever. We would have seen somebody drowned in milk, kissing the bricks, all the good festivities that come with it. But as I said, someone's life is going to change next time we speak to you all on Tuesday. But all I can say is very much looking forward to it and towards the greater spectacle and racing. But for this time, thanks very much for watching, thanks very much for listening, and we're very much excited to see you next time.